You are live.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was looking for it over here.
Call the meeting to order. The board wants to provide ample opportunity for public comment on matters that come before us. Your input is important. If you wish to address an item already on the agenda, we ask that you do so when that item comes up for discussion. If you have a comment on a matter not on the agenda, this is the time during our meeting for such comments. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board during this time will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public during this time. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Okay, we will move into the agenda. I guess I'd like to make one point right off the bat. Just the purpose of this special meeting, there was some budgetary items that we weren't prepared. We didn't have the numbers ready for the March board meeting. But because of a deadline and posting notification of those by the end of March, we couldn't, of course, wait until the April board meeting. So that is the reason for the meeting tonight, is just to satisfy that requirement. Okay, we'll move into the first, I guess we don't have any other comment, discussion type items.
Nope.
Okay.
The only actually correspondence was, I wanted to share the information that on April 11th is our Purple Up Day. So, which you and I talked about this morning. So we are going to be celebrating our military children and families on April 11th, and most likely in the community room, but we don't have all the details scheduled yet. So we are a Purple Star school, one of the few in the state. So we are have been noticed for our support of military children and families, and have a plaque and award for that. And Miss Liley's heading that up for us. So we are going to celebrate those families and any other military folks in our community on April 11th, and invite everybody to wear purple that day at school and throughout the community. And we're going to have kind of a meet and greet, just a gathering to honor all of our military children and families on the morning of April 11th. So at 8:30 to 9:15. And it sounds like Governor Gianforte and Superintendent Elsie Arnson will be joining us for that. So, and we just want to invite the community and any other military folks. We've reached out to the Legion and others. So looking forward to that.
Okay, we'll move into the first action item, approve scoreboard and time clock purchase as required by Mhsa. I'm going to introduce Mr. Odell, our athletic director, to present that information to begin with.
Well, it's actually not all required by MHSA. MHSA voted this year to incorporate shot clocks in 2 years, and then after it was voted in, which I voted against, they accelerated that timeline to next year. And so we're required to have shot clocks in both gyms. And as I was going through 22 years ago when I came here, the first thing I noticed was how horrible the scoreboards were, and they're still the same scoreboards. So the way the shot clocks work, if we were to not update our scoreboards, then they're a whole separate system. And I mean, we do need to update our scoreboards. They're definitely dated, constant breaking. But so I got a bid for just shot clocks and a bid for the scoreboard replacement in the 64 gym, 63 gym. Is it 63? 63 gym. And so this price would include shot clocks in both gyms and new scoreboard with LED and the panels that you can change the name of the guest, visitor, all that stuff. The other nice part is you can run it via phone, so any community organization that needs to use a clock doesn't have to use the controllers are quite expensive when they're not put away properly. That's a lot of maintenance and fixing of those as the courts get beat up. So the price is right there in front of you. The one thing is I have talked to some people about some organizations that are willing to pitch in. There's a couple different organizations. We also have up to 4 ad panels on the main scoreboard that can be sold, to different organizations that want to have their name up there for a price the board sets. So, we don't have to incur the full cost as a district. I do know that there's 3 different businesses and organizations in our community that want to cover the shot clocks eventually, or this year. So I do think we can get quite a bit of it paid for. We didn't even have to go looking for people to sponsor us. They actually came to me. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything more you guys need to know about the shot clocks.
Probably just the timing, the importance.
That's the other thing too, is moving on it immediately. It took me a while to get the prices and quotes from different people. When I finally did, because every school in the state is going through the same thing, and if I talked to this corporation the other day, and they said if at this point if we know we're probably on the installation for the beginning of August, if we wait any longer, it's going to disrupt classes as well as volleyball season. So we'll lose our gym for a couple days. It wouldn't be the biggest thing, but I think the best thing for the, get her done in the summer when those gyms are open.
Thank you.
No, like John said, the goal is to get most of the funding paid for through sponsorships, and our soda contract, the company that we will renew in the next year, our soda contract with, for example, is someone who usually sponsors the scoreboards in school gyms. So we'll be hoping for them to pitch in quite a bit. And we do have funding to cover the purchase. Part of it's required for us to continue our athletics program next year, as John said. And if we don't get on top of it now, we won't have them installed in time. So it is a timely manner, and we have the funding to cover this through metal mines and flex funds until we can get the sponsorships fulfilled.
What is I guess just to clarify and make sure everybody's aware, what is the final total cost?
Well, it'd be $29,300 for the main gym, the main game gym, and then on the back side, it's $4,100 total, except if we choose to order those 2 supporting brackets, but we're not going to order those. We're going to make those in-house. All the brackets we're not ordering. If we buy it, we can make them in-house to attach a shot clock, so we can do that ourselves. So it'd be $4,100 plus $29,300, and that'd be installed.
We still need the freight, or I guess the freight's included in the
Freight's
4,100. Okay.
That'd be, that's the bottom freight is just for the supporting brackets. That was $415,
Right.
and we can make that for less than $100.
Okay. Should be the 41. So we're looking at 33,400, correct?
Yeah.
33,400. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I just want to make sure that's clear. Is there a motion or discussion?
I move to, let's see, where are we at? Okay, I move to approve the purchase of the scoreboard and time clocks.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the scoreboards and time clocks. Is there discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the Fisher printer contract.
Okay, so we were up for a new contract on our printers. which is obviously a very important part of what we do here at school. And we met with and got two competitive bids, and met with each company. And once again, want to thank the administrators and Joe for leading the way on that, and for everyone taking the time to sit down with each of these companies and learn a ton about printers and copiers and the way they work, and more than we maybe even ever thought we would know. So we thoroughly went through the different items that were for purchase, the maintenance plans, and filled out bid matrices, and ended up selecting Fisher as the company to award. That was less expensive, and they had comparable products and service. So this would be a switch, a change to Fisher than the company that we had previously. But we felt like that was the responsible choice. And you have the contract in front of you. We did have our school legal counsel review the contract, and some changes were made. So you will see those outlined in the updated contract that I passed out. So some of the things that we changed were to make sure that the contract was governed by the laws of Montana, not Idaho, where their major corp is out of. We changed it, asking for any price increase to be provided within 40 days notice to the school. We removed the provisions for early termination. We ensured that the vendor cannot assign the agreement to another entity, and we removed the sections of limitations on their liability. So those were the changes recommended by our legal counsel, and Fisher agreed to all of the changes. And Joe's the expert. If you have any further questions, they'll be Canon.
We did make a couple changes to the existing printer fleet, including actually slightly reducing the number of printers and kind of changing the selection around some. We incorporated a small commercial printer, a smaller kind of publishing printer that will be used in the business lab for that teacher, and then also for the district to use, which should help reduce cost on a lot of this stuff. And then we're also going to implement, our plan is to implement some management software that will also help further reduce costs to the district. So the goal here on this contract is actually to bring our numbers down and make it a more cost-effective solution for the district.
And the $24,1480 per month, is that correct? Did I see that number right? Which 2414? Yeah, $24,1480 a month. Okay, and that's correct though. That's a monthly lease price.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what's on there should be yes.
Okay. And Fisher's out of Helena?
Yes, Fisher's out of
The
Helena,
support?
Bozeman.
And Bozeman, okay.
And actually, two of the techs that are currently with them, we have previous experience with our current company we're going with.
Okay, and obviously you're satisfied with them.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, very much so.
They've been very responsive and
They've gone above and beyond.
Okay.
So far.
provided a lot of information. I don't know if any of you want to comment on it. They'll be Canon printers, and they've got good plans for training the staff on our professional development days before school starts on the new printers and all of that. So
Okay. Well, I move to approve the contract with Fisher for print services and Canon printers.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Fisher for print services and Canon printers. Is there any discussion?
Just one more quick question. What was our previous monthly lease payment?
that's a good question. I didn't
Okay,
bring.
that's a good question.
Well, more or less.
It was actually slightly more than what
Yeah.
We're going
We've
there.
We've gone down.
It seems like, and I'm just trying to remember, it seems like it was like 26 or something.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge difference, but
Yeah.
it is less.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Apologize, I didn't bring last year's.
Is there an estimate for how much this is supposed to reduce the future burden on the district?
It is, sir, it is actually mentioned in the documentation provided by that particular contractor. Off of the top of my head, I could not answer with a number.
Is that included in the packet? I think that would be best.
Yeah, you have the printer information in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's see.
That's just the current contract.
Oh, that's just the current contract. We went through that paperwork in the presentation that they provided us, though.
Yep.
So one of the things that is new and is gonna make a difference is the management software that Joe mentioned. So it's, what's the wording for it? Follow to
Yeah,
print.
so we're using a technology called Follow Me Print, which allows the teachers and students to send their documents to one basically I'll call it a print server that then allows them to walk up to any device in the district and retrieve their print job, which ultimately will help reduce costs, avoiding untold amounts of copies being sent to the printer and not ever being picked up. And it also provides security for any sensitive information that gets printed out within the district.
I think as well, any print jobs that haven't been picked up will be dumped, deleted after a certain period of time. It's part of the software management system that's provided with that. So it cleans itself up.
And one of the things about Fisher that we liked is that they're in a lot of the school systems.
Yeah.
So they're very school friendly and they had a lot of ideas on how we could reduce print costs and have more efficiency.
Another big thing that was pointed out on this particular contract is typically with printer contracts, they are escalating, and this is specifically a non-escalating contract. In other words, what the number is that we're looking at as a district will not go up over time, versus that's not how our current contract was set up.
Okay.
Jeannie?
King's Field, is there a way to track the individual users, what they're printing? I have sat in public meetings before when people are saying, oh, I can print that off at the school.
So it absolutely is trackable, and that's part of the management software that we're using is to help actually eliminate a lot of the overages that way.
And how does that look? How do you know when somebody's printing something for personal use versus?
That's a whole other can of worms.
And how do you deal with that? Because that's a big old can.
You know, that's
So we have recently talked about this in an admin team meeting, and I have emailed with the principals about this. So just to talk to their staff, I mean, it's one of those things where, same thing in the private sector, you just hope that people are responsible and are doing the right thing. And we talk to them about print costs and the fact that it impacts our general fund budget. And the more money we spend on print, the less money we have to do with other important things we want to do in education. One of the things I think we're thinking will help us see a reduction for next year is if you see over here, these are literacy curriculums that the teachers have been reviewing and we're looking at adopting for next school year. We currently haven't had a current curriculum or workbooks, that kind of thing that the teachers and students can work out of. And it's actually less expensive to order the workbooks for the kids to work in than for the teachers to print off a bazillion copies or papers each day. So we'll have these workbooks that are necessary, and a lot of it's online. So we're hoping
So
that
staff
this
have PIN
reduces-
numbers that they use?
so they'll actually use their key fob to retrieve their print jobs. So every staff
So
member
there's
has
a
this. Yes, exactly.
And then that way we can kind of see who is printing a lot and have those conversations about what they're printing. And try to work with them to show the cost savings. If it's a certain, cursive writing program that they keep printing off, can we order it? Would it be less expensive that way? How else can we do this? Can we put a transparent sheet over the copy and so students, can use it multiple times, those kinds of things. So we definitely take a look at who's printing what and how we can reduce that.
And there's certainly an opportunity to use that light production machine to help further reduce the print costs, as the printing from the light production machine actually is quite a bit cheaper than printing from any of the other devices in the district. So there's certainly ways that we can help drive that cost down.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the ways we eliminated some of the cost too, was getting rid of certain printers in certain areas that weren't necessary. We downsized ones that suck a lot of color ink that we don't really need them. We can use them use the big machines instead and be a lot less copy, frugal with as far as ink and printer supplies and things like that. So that was one thing we looked at when we were looking at these contracts too. How can we consolidate so that not everybody's got their own printer and it's super expensive to store all those ink cartridges, etc.
And so much of it's online. There was a student today that I was working with, for example, that said they were creating a poster, and I'm thinking, where's the poster board? And they're like, it's on the computer, of course. Like we're doing this on the computer in Google Classroom. They're not. So we're doing a ton online and through Google Classroom. Students submit their work and that kind of thing. So there's a lot less
So they're not
paper going on. Yeah. These days. So I think that we learned a lot on how we can do better with that throughout the COVID and distance learning process.
Very good. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. Next item, resolution of intent to impose an increase in levies. Yes, I'm going to add one thing before I turn it over to Mrs. Hedlund for the nuts and the bolts, but I just want to make one thing very clear. This statutory requirement for us to do this right now has absolutely nothing to do with the building project that is going on out there. The two are totally independent of one another. This is simply operational budget authority that is required by law for us to post this at this time in advance of the budget that will be set in August. But it has nothing to do with the building project. I am tickled to death, fingers crossed, that budget, the building project is on time and is on budget. Okay, Mrs. Hedlund.
All right, thank you. I'm going to show some information you guys have in your packets, but I also want to put it up on the screen for those that might be joining us online. So let me just take 1 second to make sure we are okay. All right, so this is our school website, and just want to make sure you all know how to access this information. So if you go to Explore and you go to Scoreboard, we have our board members here, and we can go to School Board Agenda, and we have the packet for tonight posted. So those at home can follow along, and I will just scroll down to the section that we are at now. So this is always posted before our board meetings, so you can follow along. And this is our notice of intent to increase non-voted levies. So this is the format that we get from the Montana School Board Association and that the state law requires us to post. So this is a copy of this year's posting. And the law says that we will post the amounts for each of these sizes of home. And this is the law that explains, this is the whole reason for this agenda item, that we have to have this posted by the end of March. And as we said earlier, we would have done it at that previous meeting if we had all the numbers together. But this little sheet with these few numbers actually is generated from an Excel spreadsheet sheet workbook that has at least 14 tabs. And Ms. Sangre goes to a budget conference to work through this. And so at the budget conference, the clerks and officials from the schools go and plug in these numbers that are generated from the state and then into these very complex formulas. And there's a budget worksheet for each of these. So for the transportation, for the bus depreciation, for tuition, for each of those, there's a very complex formula that goes into each of these and equations. And so at that workshop is where Ms. Sangre begins that work of plugging in those numbers and going through each of these tabs. And then we spend another week or so fine tuning them and making sure all of our numbers are accurate with the state and all of that work. So it is a ton of work behind the scenes that goes into creating this. So I just want to kind of walk you through that process and help you to understand that. The whole point of this is this law is written in a way to make sure that we are transparent with our community and that we are noticing the max that could be levied. And it is not the plan for us to, levy the max, but this is what we're asked to do by the state, is to post the max so that everybody understands what could be levied by the school. And that has to be posted by the end of this month. So that is why we post this each year. And you can see the details there about the different levies. And that's in the packet that you should have in front of you of these different levies. And then also I passed out a sheet for you that shows the different funding streams we have for the school and the ones that the board has the authority over. So this is just a clipping, for example, that was in my file of this being posted in the paper last year. So this happens every year. This isn't anything new. This has always happened. And this is what it looked like last year when it was posted. And then if we get to here, this is my spreadsheet that I shared at the budget meeting last year. So we are not taking action on adopting budgets or setting budgets at this meeting. We're just talking about the numbers that from those formulas created the max mills and levies possible. Over the summer, we will meet and we will see where we are at. Right now, we still don't know. For example, the feds are 2 months late on releasing Title I allocations. So we still don't know what our budget looks like for next year. So we don't know where we sit on how much money we're getting from the federal government and different portions from the state. So we use that information then to work through our whole budget process of how much money we need to operate the school, how much we're getting from the federal government, all those different components, and do our best to make sure that we do not increase our, my taxes, your taxes, our taxes. As our goal is not to increase our taxes. Last year, we were able to keep our mills flat, and we actually had a decrease overall. And that is what the board charged me with doing last year and has asked that I make sure happens again this year. So you can see the mills in the different funds over the last few years and the dollar amounts that equates to on top. And you'll see that some of it has shifted. So one example I want to talk about is the tuition levy. So tuition levy is funding that we are able to levy to help compensate our special education costs. This is for very high needs students at our school that costs more than the average student to educate, that might have a one-on-one teacher with them, so have to have somebody by their side all day to be with them. This might be a student that needs to come in for special services, that is a 4-year-old that we serve. This might be a student that's in a different facility in the state that we receive a bill for because they're one of our students. but we are charged with helping pay for their education if they cannot attend school here and they have to be in a facility somewhere else in the state. We pay those bills. Those students are counted in tuition levy. We have a very comprehensive form with each of those students' names. Obviously, it's not public information to be shared because it's protected under FERPA, but we calculate out the cost of each of those students, of the people that we need to pay for that are additional to help those students through their day, the equipment that we need to have for those students in our school, those kinds of things. And all of that goes into the calculation that goes into the spreadsheet to come up with the tuition levy. So last year, for example, the max was over 7 that we could have levied for the tuition costs, and we levied 3.05. We were allowed 7.2, I believe. It was right around there. So we did levy some, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yeah. We did levy some funds in tuition. However, we did not levy all that was allowed. One of them you'll see that's changed, for example, is the building reserve. Since the bond has passed and we have funding to put into our buildings, also we now have Esser funding that we're able to upgrade our HVAC systems with and those kinds of things. We have not felt that we needed to add money to the building reserve, so we have not levied funds for our building reserve. So as you can see, priorities change, and that's why my recommendations have changed, and we've shifted where we're asking for those mills to be. So the numbers that are being proposed tonight are not what is going to be adopted, but is what has been calculated as the max that's proposed to all of you and starts this transparency and discussion. And then we have our budget meeting this summer where the actual budget is adopted. So another thing I want to point out is that with our Esser funding, sorry, I'm going to pass you guys, I have more papers over here. With our Esser funding, I passed you out some information on the Esser funding. We have used that very strategically. The Esser one it is mostly spent and was spent to help get through all of the extra costs that we went through with COVID. And Esser 2 is largely spent on professional development, new curriculum, and instructional needs, those kinds of things. A large portion of Esser 3 was used for capital purchases to make improvements to the HVAC systems, the mechanical systems, heating and cooling, all different kinds of functions to the facilities. So we are trying to make sure we're using our Esser funds to better the school and cover those costs that we could incur and would be major costs and be hardship on the school in the future, trying to cover those with our Esser funds now. Also trying to be careful not to add a bunch of new teachers, for example, with those funds, because those funds are going away in 2024 and we don't want to be on a fiscal cliff. So we're trying to balance that, but also make sure that we're investing in our students and our education. So investing in our teachers, investing in their training, and things that will last us a long time after Esser funds sunset. This year, we also went after, so these are grants that we applied for that we aren't just given. We have to go through a competitive process and apply for our Carl Perkins Fund. So that runs our CTE programs, our SHOP programs, our CCLA, our FFA, all of those programs. We receive funding for that. This year we put in for an ARP homeless children and youth grant, and we were awarded that. That was a competitive grant in the state. We applied for a competitive after school grant and were awarded that. And another one, for example, we received $95,000 In COVID, it was the ELC, the one through DPHHS for screening and testing. We were able to bring on the school health coordinator with that funding and purchase cleaning and sanitation supplies, and provide home testing kits to families and those kinds of things. So a lot of funding that we went after to make sure we could cover general fund costs and have money that we needed to do other things. So we've definitely sought after funding to cover all of our bases and needs. And because we've done that and been fiscally responsible, we will not need to levy the max mills. And our goal is to keep our mills flat and our levy very similar to last year, this coming summer. But we don't have all of our numbers yet, like I said, so we still have to go through that process. Mr. Allenville?
Just a question, are the figures on these grants that you mentioned, because you don't give us a price tag, if you will, on them, are those available online? Or, because I'm just curious of what those grants were worth. You mentioned the 95,000 on the ELC.
Yep.
But the other grants, I'd just like to know the figures on them if we can. And then also on that same subject, is there a balance left in the Esser funds for the district at this point in time? Do you have that figure?
I can share that with you. It's constantly changing because we're constantly coding bills out of it, so it changes regularly.
Understood.
Yeah, because we're using it constantly. So I can get you an estimate on that. And the state has been tracking that. We have to turn in. I was just at the state superintendent conference, and that was something that a lot of people were complaining about. Of course, all of these come with strings attached. Anytime that you accept this federal money, it's a lot of work to apply for it, but then we're constantly being asked to provide information. So we're regularly reporting on how much we've spent, how we've spent it, and all of that. So all of that is collected by the state regularly. For example, the after school grant, and Ms. Hartman did a ton of work on applying for this one, was $52,846. I'll send you these. But the homeless grant was $9,433. The Carl Perkins grant was $13,875. And one that I forgot to mention was the targeted support. This is to help our special ed program specifically, was $10,000. So those are ones that we applied for that the school doesn't just automatically get with the basic application. Like Title I federal funding, all schools are allocated a certain amount. We just have to click the box, yes, we're taking Title I funding. And yeah, of course, we do have to fill out a bunch of paperwork for that too, but these we actually chose to go after beyond the basic funding streams.
Thank you.
Yep. And all of that helps offset our general fund and regular costs. So, yes.
You have the actual for last year for your budget and remittals. How did that compare with your meeting last year, like this meeting this year, where you used the maximum available to get your budget started and then eventually do an actual that goes with it? How did it compare between those two last year as to what you finally ended up as to your projections this year?
Yeah, so this is.
I'd like to add one clarifier to that. First of all, she's a new superintendent, so Eric Wilkerson is the one that presented this last year at this time. When she took over, she would have had to have adjusted those numbers. So just for a reference, she didn't put these numbers together a year ago, but had to adopt the budget in August for that estimate. So just to clarify that.
But there should be some relation.
Yes, I just wanted you to understand that she wasn't the one that did this a year ago. She stepped in the middle of it.
Yeah, which was very interesting. So I quickly jumped into the budget to get up to speed in order to be able to make my recommendations and present the proposed budget in the summer. And Christy Sangre was awesome at helping, we took over from Pam and Eric, who had been here for quite a while, so we had to jump in and get it figured out. So this was the document from March 9th of what was proposed. So you can see, for example, on the tuition last year, it was, let me see here. We had, so if you look up here, we had transportation, 15.41, bus depreciation, 511. So if you want to take note of these, but so what, like if we look at transportation 15.41 and bus depreciation 1511, if we slide down to our actuals, sorry, this has to be flipped around when we do that. We ended up with transportation at 10.992, so quite a bit lower than what we put out.
So generally speaking, your actual ended up lower than your projected.
Definitely.
And in anticipation of the one coming up, your attempt will do the same thing.
Exactly.
Because what we tell you tonight, we can't go over that number. We can take less, but we can't
I
take more.
understand that. I was just wondering about the differences between last year in anticipation of those projections this year when the next meeting occurs.
So,
Kim, go ahead.
Where does the growth in the county come into play with this? I mean, Delaware County is probably one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And
Certified values, newly taxable property.
yeah,
When the Department of Revenue
yes,
goes through and certifies valuations, they'll actually come in with an amount of newly taxable property.
but where does that come into play with the 21, 22 projections? I mean, we've increased, you got 500 people paying a bill, and then all of a sudden you got 1,000 people paying a bill. Shouldn't these be offset with the county growth?
Yes, your anticipated cost, every time the taxable value of the county goes up, your portion of that now becomes small.
Well, and on top of it too, because the influx of people moving here, our appraisal values have skyrocketed too. So there's a lot more taxable base coming out of that. I would think that the growth would compensate this $24.58. Right?
Yeah, you won't see the change in the budget though. Where you see the change at is at the county level where the mills are actually, those mills are applied to the base value in the county. And since it's just distributed over a larger amount of assets, so you pay less.
Yeah.
You'll see it on that side as an individual, but it won't show up here.
Yeah, and that's where I'm getting at. I'm not fully understanding that.
Okay, yeah.
That, $24.58 doesn't sound like much to a lot of people, but there isn't a $200,000 house in Delaware County.
Right.
It's
Not what we want to live in.
not, it's gone. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could add another 100,000 at the bare minimum to that, or 200,000 on average. What I'm saying is there's more taxable value coming out of these houses, but nothing's going down. It's going up. So we get 100 more people moving into the county. Granted, Three Forks is exempt from that, but we get 100 more people moving into the county. When you got that many more people paying tax, why does it keep going up? It never goes down. Then you have more people paying.
I'd like to understand is how the heck is it people living on Social Security pay that stuff?
yeah, and that's why our goal is to keep it flat. Our goal is not to increase the mills or levies. So just want to repeat that. And then also, one of the things to think about is, for example, our bus our transportation fees, just like everything's being inflated right now, our transportation costs are greatly gone up. Obviously, all those yellow school buses you see running through your neighborhoods and through town, we're paying the gas for. That comes out of our transportation budget, okay? So that calculation is different this year, obviously, with the inflated gas prices, right? We also have, with all of these new students, we have huge growing pains. So we have a ton of new students here at school. We also have a ton more special ed students and students that are going to cost the district quite a bit of money. So we have additional costs with those additional students as well. But I do see what you're saying overall, and that's definitely a tax level question. I think the county may be able to help us with a little bit more, but.
Does anybody have any numbers on the growth portion of it? How much more taxable base there is, say, from 20 to 21? And I mean, obviously 22 is going to change even more, but is there any numbers on the taxable base from 2020 to 2021 and 21 to 22? Is it
21 to 22, we don't, because the Department of Revenue certifies values and gives them to the county in August.
Yeah, they're always a year behind, correct?
Well, our property taxes are. So yeah, when you pay your taxes in May, you're actually paying for the second half of the prior year.
And who checks and balances the state against that? Is there anybody that checks and balances the state? I mean, they could say, well, you had 20 new homes. Is there anybody that go, no, we've had 100?
The county assessor's office does that.
But I mean, do they actually do it, or do they take it for face value that the state's telling them?
I assume that they do, and I know that they come around, they visit properties to do their assessments on a scheduled basis. I don't know what that schedule is, but they do.
Yeah, I mean, I get, there's a lot of people that I'm fine, just to let you know, this $24 and $15 and $20, that has added up to hundreds of dollars now. And I get it. I mean, we got to have education, but some of these people aren't going to be able to afford it. So I'm just saying that the tax base in this county, the growth, I would think would more than compensate for this, but I don't know the ins and outs.
And that gets beyond, I guess, what we're prepared to discuss.
We can get that information though, I think, yeah.
That's a very legitimate question, I think, is that a lot of people have, is as our county grows, shouldn't we see, I mean, yes, obviously, you know, every infrastructure bill goes up as our county grows, but there should be, it gets to a point, I think what you're getting at is at what point is the new growth helping pay their fair share? Exactly. Yep. Because it's based on a mill. So every new home in Broadwater County should have a mill attached to it. Correct. In the overall county budget. Once you get a certain amount of mills, I would think the taxes start going down instead of up.
And one thing, I know we have Mhsa and Angie from the county joining us at our next meeting to kind of talk about the different duties that they've taken over from when Doug was there and how they've split those duties, and maybe we could ask them to bring some of those answers. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we work with them as the county superintendent position and versus me as the school district superintendent and that kind of thing. So that'd be a good thing to ask if they could bring us some information on next meeting.
You had mentioned more students, and my question is, in the last 2 years since the county has grown so much, what has been the increase in your student population?
So we've had many weeks where we're averaging around 7 new students a week. We have multiple classrooms that are maxed out beyond the state levels. So that is really, we're definitely feeling the growing pains. It's something we're gonna have to work through and a challenge. Like I talked about, part of preparing for that budget next year, we're gonna have to add some teachers because we have to get these classrooms to a reasonable size. And in the new building, luckily, we have some room to do so. But we have started last year, we ended with around 630 students. And this year, we're getting close to 700. So,
But at the same time, not every new resident has kids.
right,
So there's still money coming from
Oh, yeah.
those that are not applying to
Yep.
that. So
agreed.
What was the number of, I'm sorry, what was the
And I
number?
can get you the exact number. Like I said, it literally changed today twice. But
Your estimate there
so
that you just,
we were at 630 last year. We're around 700 now.
630 to 700?
Yep.
In an estimation, okay.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, if I could have one caveat to the enrollment number is those, there's a formula they use where they take the enrollment on designated dates. So there are students that come that, and especially we have seen, I think we've seen this as people have moved. To me, I think a lot of our movements in relation to the pandemic and people coming
That's where I was
here.
going.
And so if they're not, we're responsible for educating every student that comes through the door, but we get funded for only ones that are here on a certain date, if that.
We take a count twice.
So,
during
correct.
the year.
Yes.
October and February.
yeah.
So
Just
we're-
had it in February.
Not receiving full funding for a pretty fair portion of the students that have come during the school year.
And
And hopefully they stay and we will in the future.
And then just as an example, what was the count in February? Seems like I remember
683.
or something, 682. They don't, Brad, they don't ever back pay that.
They do not, no. They had, there's a spring count and they use a formula combining the two to help alleviate, that loss of revenue from new students.
And our, populations that are at risk and require additional support for their education, like our foster care enrollment and our homeless children enrollment has definitely increased this year as well. A lot of new foster care students and things at the school.
And that is directly connected to tuition.
To tuition. So the two levies that she's identified, transportation and tuition, those are two pretty easily identifiable costs. Fuel and kids with special circumstances and special requirements. And that is what brings us to trying to estimate something that is coming at us in the future.
So we didn't just pick these numbers. Like I said, they came out of the formula systems that we are required to use by the state. And then in certain areas though, like adult ed, we have a carryover. We have funding from before COVID. We had a healthy adult ed fund and we weren't able to provide adult ed programming for a period of time. So we're not going, and last year we didn't, and once again, we won't ask for any money to be levied or raised in adult ed because we have a healthy budget for that. And we're excited about, having more opportunities to offer programs this year and next year and going forward in that, but we have funding for that. And then, like I said, I have sought out grants and had the support of the district to apply for those additional funding streams to try to offset some of our additional costs for some of those groups of students that need extra support and for some of the programs that are just really important to our community and our families, like the after-school program. And one that I didn't mention earlier was we got free lunch and breakfast for all of our families this year. So we applied for all of those programs that seemed reasonable and that we could take advantage of to provide a quality education and offset our general fund.
So just to follow up then, so other than those two funds, all the other funds and with intent is either stays the same or decreases. As I'm looking at 22, 23 projections.
Well, transportation should end.
Other than the two, yeah, right. And the education is the other one, yeah. Or the tuition, I'm sorry.
Tuition and
Tuition and transportation, right.
Yeah, we've been able to utilize Esser for a lot of our technology needs. And so, yeah, we are not going to ask for money where it's not needed. It's, like I said, it's our taxes, and none of us in this room want to pay any more taxes either. I mean, we're all in the same boat. We're all part of this community, and we understand that the community's been amazing and supportive of this school district, and we're really excited that the bond was supported. And so we, our goal is definitely, and the board has charged me with the mission of being as fiscally responsible as possible and budgeting to where we can keep our mills and levies flat.
One follow-up question, I'm sorry, then this I'll be done, I hope. On your 2021 analysis compared to 22 for student population, in the 2021 cycle, a lot of the students were not here due to the pandemic and the lockdown. Did you folks get an analysis of the increase that we're seeing now from, for example, the 630 to the 700? Do you have an analysis of how many of them students that actually were already enrolled that just were not being counted because they weren't here, but yet now because the pandemic has gotten over, now they're back? Instead of what I'm saying is it an increase in population of students or just students returning?
No,
Does that make any sense to try to clarify that?
we had the same, even the kids that were remote learning or when the school was closed, we still counted those kids. So if they were enrolled before the pandemic, they were still enrolled through the pandemic.
True, but we had a lot of kids that, from what I heard, was not in the classroom or in the remote learning, either one. They were homeschooled.
Okay.
Correct.
We had a small number of them.
So an answer.
Again, I just didn't know what the numbers are. Thank you for the chance to ask the question.
Yeah, and I think maybe a little better answer would be that there were a number of families that chose to homeschool independent of the school rather than school from home with our remote offering. Those students, for the most part, there are a handful that have decided homeschooling was the best option for them, even though we've returned to full classroom instruction and don't offer remote. That's a pretty small number of ones. Most of the numbers you're seeing and the increased enrollment that she mentioned are people that are new to the new residents of our district that have come in.
Thank you
So,
for clarifying that.
That helps.
It's a question as many as possible.
Yeah, we have seen
That's
it.
a good question.
Yeah. Some, and the students that didn't return or the ones that, can stay home and learn independently, mainly some of our older students that, decided that they liked the online learning platform and might have stayed home. So the increase is definitely more so in the younger ages. Or we've had families call and say, they're going to start next year, that kind of thing. We already have registration going crazy for next year of new students that are waiting to start until next year. So.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Lots of inquiries in high school too.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the next steps for this process? So what I'm hearing is this is the notice of intent, this is public transparency, there'll be some other type of notice in the paper. Then you'll make a decision over the summer, and then there's any additional notice on the decision that is made that's public facing?
We will adopt next year's budget in August. That would be, I guess, the next step in terms of this budget and what these numbers are for.
And then is that provided, is that also part of another meeting after August, or how?
It will be part of, it's either part of the August board meeting or sometimes necessary, just like this one, we move that specific item to a special meeting. But it has to be done in August, by August 25th, I believe.
Yeah, the budget meeting can be pretty in-depth, so sometimes we have a special meeting or a separate meeting so that we can just tackle budget that night. I believe we did that last year.
Yeah, we did it last year.
And then that information goes to the county, and then that's where they work and figure out how it actually impacts you.
And with that, with the county take, so adopted August timeframe goes to the county, And then when does that actually go into place? Is that all on the federal fiscal year
No.
cycle?
So that would be part of your regular county tax schedule, being November and May.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the updated information is in November, comes out in November, if I recall, for the taxes in November, yeah.
Yeah, and right now, I just don't have all the information I need from the feds, especially at this point. But because we have so many different components of our budget, as on that fund sheet that I sent around, for example, our Title I allocation is really important to the school district, and there's many other funds that go into it. So I have to calculate, our total projected expenditure, and we have a line item for every teacher and their salary and benefits and everything, down to supplies, down to copies, like we were talking about earlier. So I have to come up with our total projected budget for expenditure, and then see what we have for allocations. And then that's where we would adjust. That's part of how we would adjust our levies and mills and or, staffing and all of those different components, so.
As you can imagine, a lot of the fear people have is that the inflation is eating away at what little extra income they have. Any increase in taxes is chewing away at money they literally don't have. You're talking a lot about trying to keep the mills level at a time when you probably should be taking an effort to austerity. If we were able to talk to the community, what efforts have you made towards austerity at a time when there literally isn't more to be had?
I understand your question, but I also understand, as we stated, the expenses of educating kids keeps going up.
Part of the discussion today was your sports director talking about what sounded like a mandatory improvement of a scoreboard. That may be mandatory, but a scoreboard doesn't rank in terms of the cost of education. That's a prime candidate for austerity. Why couldn't that have been pushed off for 2 more years? Granted, it's only $23,000 in a budget of $7 million. But we're going ahead with purchasing it at a time when people are having trouble paying their bills.
For that item, if we're gonna have our.
I use it only as an example.
Yeah, if we're gonna have our high school activities and stuff, we have to have it placed in like a whole basketball. Or they can't.
Therein lies my problem.
Right.
A person with a piece of paper and a pencil can do the same thing as a scoreboard. I understand that the state organization is mandating it, which sounds a little bit like some insanity at the state level. But where's the austerity? What steps have you taken, not just to keep the bills flat, but to actually pull it down at a time when the federal government is talking about trying to reduce taxes to stave off the inflation?
I think, they discussed the Esser funds and how they were used to improve facilities, especially with our HVAC system throughout the high school and middle school. Those are reducing operational costs in the future. They'll reduce energy consumption, future maintenance. Those are big ticket items too. And those were paid for out of the federal funds that came through. What does that stand for again? Emergency?
School and secondary.
School, secondary, elementary.
Relief fund.
Yeah. So, yes, sir.
Good job.
Good job.
Good job.
If the federal government can't be trusted for a good acronym, what can they be trusted for?
Yeah.
That was over $700,000 out of Esser 3, for example. Yeah.
I think, measures towards austerity, everything that we do, we have an eye on the budget. And it's going to be challenging, for sure. But I would point to that. I think with this new school, I know that's a big ticket item, but I can't even imagine trying to build that today as opposed to doing it 2 years ago. And we waited until the high school levy was about to retire. The high school bond was about to retire before we even thought about moving ahead with that. So we didn't have 2 layers of taxation on our county.
But these are all past items. The school levy was 2 years ago. The Esser funds came in at least in 2020, if not already 2021.
But we're just utilizing those funds now
Yeah.
to
To
deal with
offset
our deferred maintenance in the future.
You know,
We're going to try to reduce.
we invite the community to come in for strategic planning, and that's
When does that
when,
occur?
huh?
When does that occur?
Yeah, and we would love to have everybody here come in. Sometimes it's not very well attended, and it gets to be kind of discouraging. I guess we get more community participation when we say the word levy to get everybody in here, which is great. We want you guys to come in, and it's our job as a board is to help interface between the school and our community. And to have you come in and have your input is great.
If you look up here, the trend is we are reducing also. So that is the goal.
Reducing your budget, yes. Has it reduced the tax burden
Right,
year to year?
right.
Yeah, but you're also pinning the entire county tax burden on us.
Yeah.
The way you're wording your question.
If you,
I don't think so, it's just his proportion that comes to you.
then I apologize. The answer is yes. You're the school board. You represent the governing authority for this taxing structure. The buck stops with you.
For the school's portion of it.
Correct,
Absolutely,
and that's-
not your entire
And
county
I'm only
taxes.
discussing the school's portion of it. If it's, when I get upset at the county, I'll go to the county.
Okay, but
and I have-
so I have a question, this is completely hypothetical too. If you looked at your tax bill, would you be able to identify if the school portion came down and the other portion went up?
Yes.
Yeah. At least it looks that way if it's not the way it
There
actually
should be,
works.
there's a line item
If
there.
higher
Yeah,
value
there is.
numbers,
Yeah.
that man knows his tax bill.
Two-thirds of my taxes, property taxes go to the school, 2/3 of it. And there's a third left over from the rest of the county.
Yes, sir.
I have a basic question on does the material, financial material that you've gone through tonight for the school program and so forth, does the review or assessment or preparation go into any organization or individual to review that other than those that are within the school system, the board or other people in it? Are they the sole people that come up with all this information, or does somebody else actually take a look at it and see if 5.75 mils needs to be done for A? Is it all done in-house, or is it also reviewed by somebody out-house? That may be a bad word.
No, that's a great question. I'll start with answering that, and then I'll let Christy chime in. But all of these,
It may be descriptive, however.
yeah. So especially jumping in and trying to figure out what had been done before we were here, and then jumping in. We use MASBO and MTSBA, so the Montana Association of Business Officials is the school clerk organization. So Christy runs her work through them, works with them. And Montana School Boards Association, we work with them regularly. They look through all of our spreadsheets, for example, to make sure that our calculations were right on our numbers. So we definitely
But
work
that's
with.
basic in-house. It is an independent entity.
No, it's an outside organization that we pay a membership fee to do that work for us. Yeah, they're not here. So these are folks in Helena or different locations in the state that do that review work for us. And then we are also held accountable to the state for all of our information. Like I said, we constantly have to submit numbers and reports. And then we also have a yearly audit. So we have an outside agency that audits us continually and, down to each receipt. So we definitely get monitored for our making sure that we're being very frugal and fiscally minded and having procedures and all of that in place for for everything that's being spent. Yep. And that's one of the things too, with Esser funding, it can only be used for certain purposes and in certain ways, and we have to be very explicit with that. And like Kevin mentioned, we really tried to think of those big ticket items that would hit our building reserve hard in the next however many years, like our 30-year-old HVAC mechanic system in the high school. We're going to replace that. It's a big ticket item. We're going to use Esser funds. That's allowable under Esser, so we're going to use Esser funds to replace that. So we have over $700,000 in capital expenditures that are going into the high school and middle school facilities with Esser funds to cover those, so we're not having to look for money in our building reserve and those things for years to come.
Who does the initial preparation of your budget proposal, like on the paper?
Mhsa and I. Yes.
Thank you.
So we spend a couple months crunching numbers, and then we definitely, like I said, have it reviewed. And
I had 2 people outside of the school review my numbers at the budgeting workshop.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you know Vern Beefer. He's a friend of mine, but I send my worksheets off to him. He was a school superintendent and director of the special ed co-op for many years in Park County. So that's just kind of an informal, conversation. And then formally we work with our organizations that we pay to do that work and review for us. So, yeah. And we meet with the board regularly. We have committees of the board, the budget committee that I meet with and Christy meet with along the way to show our work and where we're at, so we keep the board informed. And then we update the community and the board at meetings on any financial situations. Always am letting them know about the grants we're being awarded and about any funding decisions that are made obviously go through the board. So there's checks and balances.
I just want to say thank you for all the hard work that you do. I appreciate your explaining all these numbers. Today I was looking through them and it really did make a little bit of sense, but not a lot. So I really, really appreciate you going to the time and the trouble to explain them to all of us. And my take on it is it looks like you guys are doing a great job. And from the numbers that I see down there, that they've been pretty consistent over the last 4 or 5 years, and considering the economy and the way prices go up and down, it looks to me like you guys are doing a great job, and I just wanted to say I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty amazing the work, like I said, that goes into this little document that it's very important. And like I said, it impacts all of us. And it's not to be taken lightly. We take this responsibility very seriously. But there's a ton of work that goes into producing these, and their equations that are put out by the state and that are vetted and gone through many times before published. So
is there anything that you guys get from the state every year that tells you basically the total amount that they've collected from the county?
State appropriation, legislature appropriates for statewide use.
Yeah, but
County then is just allocable to the county.
But there's certain dollars that come out of every taxpayer in this county that goes to the county. Certain dollars that goes to the state. Is there anything that you guys get?
Nothing goes to the state like that. That's the value, the assessments are actually calculated by the Department of Revenue. It's the county that collects the assessment.
But how do you know that you guys are getting the proper amount of funding? Because I'm just running some numbers through a population in this county and using a very light number, and it's coming nowhere close to you guys' overall. I mean, I know what I pay in taxes just to the school on what I'm paying that on. And like I said, there's not a $200,000 house in this county. So adding those numbers up, I don't think the state is dispersing the money correctly. I don't think it's the school board or the county, I think it's the state. Because the numbers I'm adding up, they're not adding up to what you guys should be receiving.
Can I ask maybe a question on what Kip's talking about? Is that a flat rate after 200,000?
No, it's the same rate for every $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there any, do you guys get any check and balance from the state that says, okay, we collected this much in taxes from this many people, here's your guys' check? In layman's terms.
The state gives us set numbers that we'll receive from the state, and then they tell us the maximum amount that can be levied. So we chose not to put a vote out with a higher amount. We chose to take a reduced amount in our budget instead.
So the state's got a coffer of money sitting there and you guys will choose.
Well, we can choose whether to ask voters for more money,
No,
or we can choose not to ask.
This is out of the coffer.
Am I missing
This is overall.
I'm going to say the answer to your question, no, or at least, I don't think we're able to answer that. But I get what you're after, but I don't think I can answer it. I'm going to say no.
So maybe when they come from the county at the next meeting?
Right, that was what I was going to
That's
say.
for
That's the question for the county treasurer, I think, honestly.
I know I've been in other districts where we were in the situation where we were literally waiting on money to come in from unpaid taxes. So we didn't have some of our revenue. So I know that that's a thing. I don't know how to explain it more precisely, and the gals from the county definitely could help with that. So.
And obviously there's a severe lag in how that works and what you're getting at. All these new houses and how long does it take the assessor to catch up to it and how, and I don't know if that's a 6-month lag or a 16-year lag. I don't know, but obviously there's a lag.
The
It
lag
was
of the
18
state.
months.
18 months.
From new construction homes, it was an 18-month lag.
Which does it stand to reason that the more new construction there is, the more that lag would grow? I mean, is that?
So there's a lot of disconnect. When we had our county assessors in-house in Broadwater County, they were not up to speed, but they had a pretty good grasp on it. Then they located them at the state. They no longer were at our courthouse, and the lag became huge. And one way we discovered it was when we started having all the sanitation problems, and every house in the county was taxed at that time for $125 per home. And so on the new construction, when a person gets a mortgage, the bank is trying to figure out what to hold for an escrow. So they'll call a real estate agent and say, hey, this one hasn't been assessed. Can you give me an idea of how much it's going to cost? So on this particular house, I said, sure, I'll give you an idea. And it had just been at the commissioners meeting where we were talking about the sanitation. So I pull up this house and just happened to glance, oh, there's no sanitation charge on this house. So in that subdivision, in 2 seconds, I found 9 homes that were not being charged $125. So then I just became on a goose hunt because I got obsessed with this. I found 40 homes in South Salem County that weren't assessed. They kind of got that kind of taken care of. And in the process of that, they started showing up at the new construction homes and actually started to assess them much sooner. Because another thing that our county doesn't have, because we don't have zoning, we don't have a lot of regulations. In the county, you're required to have a septic permit, an electrical permit, and mechanical. So there was no charges for dump fees, those kind of things, because we don't have the permitting that covers all of that. So that's why they tried to start to get out there and assess properties a lot quicker. But we just had a piece of land that was closing today that I'm not involved in the transaction, but I had previously sold the whole subdivision. They called me and said, hey, there's delinquent taxes on this subdivision. You need to get your developer to pay these. I said, my developer had taxes held out of every single closing because in order to close a property, the taxes have to be paid current. He hasn't owned these properties for over a year. There are no delinquent taxes. What gives? So that subdivision was not divided out on the tax assessor's numbers. So my question is, where's all this money? Now you have people that have escrows on those properties. Their mortgage lender is collecting taxes. Our county is still billing the original developer. We have a huge disconnect, even prior before to what Kif said. This was a subdivision that involved 7 lots. There's a whole bunch more of this going on than just that. And I'm not pointing fingers, but thank you, Mrs. Flynn, for putting it out last night that you were having the board meeting. It started a good discussion. This happens in meeting in this county where people are involved. And we have to be involved on all levels. And I think that you guys have done a fantastic job of getting information out there, clarifying things. We need community involvement. There needs to be a check and balance system between our tax assessed value and what you guys are doing.
Okay, I think the discussion has moved beyond the governance of this board. And so I will ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the resolution of intent to impose an increase in levies.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to change it a little bit. Move to approve the proposed levies as presented. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. I do want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to come. I will make an announcement right now. We will do this again next year in March. Just so everybody is aware, and we will have our budget approval meeting in August. It will either be at the August regular board meeting or it could be in a special board meeting, but it happens in August. And we are trying to do our best to communicate as much as we can. Sometimes we miss some things. Sometimes we don't put out enough detail, but feedback from you. Attendance here tonight, again, is greatly appreciated, and we do appreciate your involvement. And when we do get to our next strategic planning meeting, I encourage all of you to come because that's the time when we need the input on the direction of the school from the point of view of the community.
When is that?
Well, they're moving target because, we had them very scheduled. We had one last August. We had one again in September or October.
Yeah. We had one in August, and then January, then July, or June. Actually, it was June. So, and then we've over the last year, it's kind of dropped out since then. But it must have been 2021. Over that academic year, we had 3 strategic planning sessions that moved forward. So we have to discuss really around how we're going to move this forward from this point on.
So my next question is notice. How we've tried the paper, we do some stuff on Facebook, the school website. How do we notice you when those things, that you will see it?
Let me know, I'm a big mouth.
I got it.
Okay.
Would you guys also check your dates on trustee terms? They didn't appear to be correct.
Yeah, those weren't. No, you're right.
Yours, I believe, is
On the website.
correct.
Okay.
I will get that addressed as soon as possible.
And thank you, Joe, for attending tonight.
Just on that subject of your question, how to disseminate the information to the public, I'm not advertising, but I am publisher of a new paper here in the county, and I want to work with you guys to help you get the information out. I'll leave a few copies with you in case you haven't seen them, and that way I can get on the front page to help get this out. This is a weekly publication that will be out there for everyone.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Personnel, we have resignation.
So our head basketball coach Mr. Watson has put in his resignation. I about had a heart attack because I was worried what he was resigning from. I am still not pleased to have him resigning from the basketball coaching position, but we are glad he is staying on as teacher as far as we know so far. He runs a great program and he spends a lot of time with the students and at school. And so just want to say thanks to him for a great job this year. And I don't know if Ms. Heverin or anybody else would like to add to that.
Yeah, as we know, Mr. Watson, as he says in, his letter, many years involved with this program. I know he was, he really cares about the kids in his program, and he's invested I don't even know how much extra time and effort into his program. So we just really appreciate all that he's done for numerous groups of boys basketball teams and kids over the years. So he's been great to work with, and we'll miss him. I think he's looking at spending more time for personal reasons. So, yeah.
Probably have something to do.
Little retirement. Grandkids,
Fishing.
I think. Grandkids and fishing might be in the picture. I don't know.
I move to approve the resignation of Clint Watson as head basketball coach.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resignation of Clint Watson as head basketball coach. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Employment, social studies, Broadfield, grades 6 through 12.
So as many of you know, Mr. Patrick has stepped in and stepped up and been a lifesaver this year as our social studies teacher. And we would like to offer him the position officially for next year. We did do a wide search and interviewed many highly qualified candidates. We had a really great candidate pool, but he has done a great job this year and was a great fit. Ms. Heverin can speak to how well he works with the students here, and is connected.
Yeah. Started as obviously his historical reference here. He was actually a student in his younger years here. He was a student teacher in the fall, and then the situation that we found ourselves in, we needed a long-term sub, and he just dove right in, and he has just, again, committed a lot of time, and he's very conscientious. He wants to do a good job. And the students love him. The staff really engages with him and likes him a lot too. So I highly recommend him. He's going to do an excellent job. Looking forward to working with him.
I'll move to approve the hire of Tyler Patrick for social studies, grades 6 through 12.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the hire of Tyler Patrick for social studies, grades 6 through 12. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Substitute.
So we had a great applicant. We're always excited when we get applications in because, as you may have noticed, we've had many positions open and vacant throughout the year. I know Mr. Rock taught class today, and Miss Heverin, I know.
Mrs. Heverin was teaching math.
Miss Hartman's in the lunchroom and at recess, and we're all over the place. And so it's been, just really hard, I'm sure, as you all know, in your positions to get quality staff and to fill positions right now. And especially with wages, with keeping our budget down and being able to find people is challenging. So anytime we get applicant, we're really excited. Right now, we really need substitutes. We're having a hard time filling positions if we have staff vacant right now. And so we got an applicant, Brenda Phillips, for a substitute. And we also were excited to get to meet her. She's new to our community, but she worked for the Great Falls School District for 16 years. And she has a lot of great experience from working in the financial office there and in other roles that will be very helpful to our school district. But right now I'm just asking, so as we get to know her and learn more about how she can be a good fit with our district, right now I'd like to get her started as a substitute.
I move to approve the hire of Brenda Phillips for substitute.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the hire of Brenda Phillips for substitute. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. I think that wraps it up. I do have one thing for the board. So Ms. Hedlund and I had a conference video with Chris Goss this afternoon on the policy, or overhaul of our policies. He was supposed to come in person and he had to cancel, so we visited briefly, but we would like to look at the possibility of the board getting together in its entirety in a work session to go through all of that, and go through the changes and the duplicity that he's identified in something. We can either break it into 2 events, or if everybody had the time, try and cram it into one, but it would take 3 to 4 hours. So we would probably want to start a little earlier. But anyway, he identified the week of April 18th. If that is a possibility that we could do that, I think that's the best format for us to process, to go through to do that, as versus splitting it into just a couple of the board members doing it and then coming back together. I think it would be ideal if we could all do it together.
So a 3-hour session or a plan a 4-hour session?
I would
if we
plan
get that
for a
earlier?
4-hour session, and that would be the next step to go through that. And then from there, in order to get this done in time for him to move on to our handbooks and have all of it wrapped up before August when school starts again next. So it does need to be done relatively quickly to try and accomplish that. So I don't know.
That Monday, it's Easter Monday on the 18th.
It doesn't have to be the
so I'm
18th,
saying
just that
it
week of the
that
18th.
takes one of those days.
Okay.
So it'd be
Tuesday,
Wednesday.
Tuesday, yeah, we would have to start it after the construction meetings, which would put us probably 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Tuesday,
On
the 19th,
Tuesday,
that would work.
19th.
Works.
And we may not get 100%, but I guess I'm looking for at least
Yeah,
2
I'm not
months.
gonna make it that week, but.
And
go
I
ahead.
can set up a Zoom link also if that works better for anyone to participate that way. And I will send out the Google Drive that he created that shows an overview and index of all the policies, and then which ones we need to discuss, which ones we need to update, and those different. He did a really nice job of laying it all out so we can go through it. And so you can look at it ahead of time, and any of the ones that you have special interest in or those kind of things we can each review independently so it goes quicker when we get together.
Yeah, as doing that as an entirety, that also serves as a first reading for those policies, and then we would have to do a second reading after those.
And MTSBA, they're going to house those policies after that in their service?
Yes, I talked to him today about that, on how we work with our page. And I think the ideal situation is that we just provide a link on our page that takes straight to MTSBA, rather than us. Every time there's an edit or provision, that way it just gets taken care of. So a link from our site to MTSBA.
Okay.
Is that
So-
something, oh, I'm sorry, I was gonna say, is that something you would want this room for? Because our facilities are, this room's booked, or would you do this
I-
as the office?
Well, I don't know if the office, but we could find another room, I would think. if
Well, just let me know, and if it's open, well, if you guys decide for sure where you want to be, need a space, let me know.
Okay.
We'll get it booked.
So 19th is that,
Tuesday?
Kevin, you said you won't be here, but.
No, you were describing having the link and there's the document on their MTSBA server. So we're going to be reviewing policies monthly, or the board will be, and making changes to those. So how does those take place? How does that happen? If it's on their server, they would have to go in.
So after each of our meetings, I send the policy as you adopted it, and they update it and put it on the website, on their site. That's part of what we're paying them for. So they post it in the way that you adopted it and put the revised on and everything, and then post it in there and make sure that there's not a duplicate and all that.
Well, I guess I would ask, Kevin, it's important, you'll be gone that week. Could we move it up a week? Man, would that be helpful?
Well, I think that week was available for Chris.
Okay, I was just thinking.
If I have the document ahead of time that I can review and then zoom in, I think we can make that work. I don't, like on the 19th, I won't be available to do that. I won't be able to Zoom in, but,
Is there?
Yeah, we could, let's be flexible.
21st would work, 21st and what, 22nd, what is it?
21st is a Thursday.
Yeah. That would work.
Try and shoot
But
for the 21st.
you guys do what you gotta do. I will, you know.
I
do
can
what
meet
do
with
to make it work.
you individually too, so I can get any comments from you ahead of time
Okay.
or something,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, Thursday, I'll be running a little late on. Not, I would be, I'd be available by 6 probably on those Thursdays. On Thursday. I'm good, either way.
I'm not sure yet. I'm sure it'll probably work out, but yeah.
So go for Thursday?
If that's better for Kevin, that's great. We'll make, yeah, absolutely. And I'll see if I can get around a little sooner. I got an obligation from 3 to 5, so I should, yeah.
One other thing I think we want to announce while you guys are looking at your calendars, while we have a crowd here still, is that we are going to do a ceremony for the old building and give people a chance to see their old classrooms one last time and that kind of thing. And did you have that date by chance?
May 3rd.
May 3rd
May 3rd.
is what we're shooting for that. So it's not official. We don't have all the details worked out yet, but we did want to make sure people knew we were going to do that kind of an event. And we're also going to honor some of our retirees this year on that date that served the school for many years. And so we'll kind of do that into a combo so people can do one last visit through the old building, and we can honor those folks that retired this year that spent many years with the district. And then we will have a ribbon cutting in August in the new building. And those dates are going to be really, we're going to be down to the wire. So those are going to be hard. We might not have a whole ton of notice to give the public, but that'll be an exciting event. And we are doing tours with different community groups. So people can reach out. We've taken the Rotary and different groups through the MSU Extension Leadership Group and some different groups. So if anyone would like to see, it's pretty cool to see how it's coming along and that kind of thing, just reach out. So.
I took some new pictures today too, because it looks pretty amazing. So I'll post those out on the building project site. I went through and snapped a few. It's looking great.
It's been an intense school year, and especially like some of these kindergarten teachers with, over 20 kids in their classroom, and these little old rooms are really excited for their new classrooms. And after the couple of challenging years working through COVID and all that, it gives the teachers something to really be excited for next year. So it's been really fun to see their reactions to their new classrooms and that kind of thing. So we're excited to celebrate that. And like I said, we're really thankful to the community for approving that bond, and we will do our best to be fiscally responsible, keep chasing other funding sources to make sure that we can offer the best education possible and not put that on the taxpayers. So we will definitely keep all of your input in mind. So thank you for tonight.
So I think what I'll do, I'll reach out to Chris, MTSBA again, and kind of feel out the 21st and the 19th and see if his schedule has a preference one way or the other. And then I will relay that information. Okay, very good. Next board meeting is April 12th. I expect to see all of you here. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Meeting adjourned.